Hi, I'm Emma. Welcome to Hidden Finance. If you're earning more than ever but still feel like you're standing still, you're not alone. Here, we uncover the quiet systems shaping your money, income traps, rising costs, lifestyle inflation, and the hidden psychology that keeps even high earners feeling stuck. No hype, no shortcuts, just clear thinking and practical strategies that actually move the needle. If you're ready to stop reacting to money and start directing it, this is where we begin. Morning traffic crawls through the city like a tired animal. Inside one of those cars sits a familiar character, the one who could be called the quiet survivor. Not poor in the dramatic sense, not homeless, not starving, just permanently one problem away from collapse. The dashboard suddenly flashes a warning light. A small mechanical symbol appears, yellow, harmless looking, almost polite. But the stomach reacts before the brain does, because the mind already knows the translation. Something is wrong, and fixing it will cost money. A mechanic might say it's a $300 repair, a simple part, a quick fix. Yet the bank account says something else entirely. $47 left until Friday. So the engine light becomes background noise. The radio gets turned up a little louder. The rattle under the hood becomes something to ignore. Life continues for 2 weeks, then 2 months, until one day the car doesn't start in a grocery store parking lot, or worse, dies on the highway. A tow truck arrives, $200. The small broken part that could have been replaced early has quietly destroyed something deeper inside the machine. Now the repair isn't $300, it's $2,200. 2 missed work shifts, another $300 gone. Suddenly, a small financial inconvenience becomes a $2,700 disaster. And here lies the first uncomfortable truth most people rarely say out loud. Being broke isn't just stressful, it's mathematically expensive. The world quietly charges a premium for not having money. Imagine 2 people walking through the same city. One could be called the comfortable strategist, the other the prisoner of urgency. They buy the same things: food, transportation, clothes, time. But somehow the second person always ends up paying more, not because of laziness, not because of stupidity, but because survival leaves no room for long-term decisions. Take something ridiculously simple: shoes. A well-made pair costs $80 and lasts 5 years. But when the wallet holds only $15, the decision changes. Cheap shoes appear on a discount rack. Thin soles, loose stitching, comfortable for about 3 months. Then the rain arrives. The soles crack, water seeps in. Next season, another $15 pair replaces the broken one. Then another. 5 years pass. The cheap shoes have been replaced 8 times. Total spent $120. The person with the expensive shoes paid $80, stayed dry, and never had to think about shoes again. This isn't just about footwear. It's about a hidden economic law quietly shaping everyday life: the cost of being unable to afford durability. Now, expand that logic across an entire life. Groceries bought in small quantities cost more per item. Bank accounts with low balances get charged overdraft fees. High-interest loans appear when credit history collapses. And slowly, invisibly, a pattern emerges. The people with the least money are often paying the highest price for everything. It becomes a silent tax, a tax on scarcity, a tax on instability. But the damage is not just financial. Something else begins to happen inside the mind. The brain enters a permanent state of urgency. Psychologists sometimes describe this as the tunnel effect. When resources are scarce, attention narrows. Long-term strategy disappears. Only the next bill matters, the next shift, the next emergency. Studies have shown that constant financial stress can temporarily reduce cognitive performance, not because intelligence disappears, but because mental bandwidth is consumed by survival calculations. The mind is busy solving today's problem, which means tomorrow quietly grows more expensive. And so the cycle continues. Cheap solutions today, expensive consequences tomorrow. Eventually, life starts to feel like a treadmill, running harder every year, yet somehow staying in the same place. But here is the unsettling question that begins to appear when someone finally pauses long enough to notice the pattern. If being broke makes everything more expensive, is the system quietly designed to keep people exactly where they are? Long before economists tried to explain inequality with graphs and formulas, a fictional character once described the problem perfectly. Not with statistics, but with boots. Picture 2 workers starting the same winter morning. One could be called the man who owns tomorrow, the other the man borrowing today. The first walks into a store and buys a pair of sturdy leather boots, hand-stitched, thick soles, built to survive storms and mud. Price? $60. Expensive, yes, but those boots will last 10 winters. The second worker walks past the same shelf. The price tag might as well say impossible. Instead, he buys a cheaper pair, cardboard lining, synthetic sole. Price? $15. Affordable, for now. Winter arrives, snow melts into the streets. Within months, the cheap boots begin to split open. Cold water seeps through the seams. Next year, another pair is purchased. Then another. 10 winters pass. The man with durable boots spent $60. The other spent $150. And his feet were wet the entire time. That story may sound small, almost trivial, but hidden inside it is a financial principle that quietly governs modern life. Lack of capital forces expensive decisions. This principle shows up everywhere once the eyes learn to recognize it. Take household supplies. Someone with $50 available walks into a warehouse store and buys a massive package of toilet paper. The cost per roll drops dramatically. Months of supply secured. But someone living paycheck to paycheck cannot lock $50 into bathroom supplies, so smaller packs appear at convenience stores. 4 rolls for $6. Individually, the purchase feels harmless, but the math reveals something strange. The price per roll is often 3 times higher. The same product, the same paper, yet scarcity multiplies the cost. Economists sometimes call this the poverty premium. It hides inside grocery stores, inside interest rates, inside the banking system itself. Consider how banks treat different customers. Someone with $10,000 in their account often receives free services, no monthly fees, better interest rates, priority treatment. But someone with $40 left in their account lives under a different set of rules. A forgotten subscription charges $25. The account drops slightly below zero. Then a penalty appears, $35 overdraft fee. Effectively borrowing $5 for one day suddenly costs 7 times the amount borrowed, an invisible interest rate that would sound absurd in any other context. Yet this system quietly collects billions every year, almost entirely from people who can least afford it. Meanwhile, the wealthy earn interest, the struggling pay it. Money flows upward like water running downhill. And the strange part is this: most people believe the problem begins with discipline. Spend less, work harder, cut the coffee. But that advice ignores a deeper reality. Financial struggle is rarely just about habits. It is about structural friction. Life without savings contains constant obstacles: broken appliances, unexpected medical bills, transportation failures. Every small disruption becomes a financial emergency, and emergencies rarely allow optimal decisions. Instead, they demand immediate ones, the cheapest today, the most expensive tomorrow. Which raises a new realization, one that often changes the entire perspective on money. Escaping financial stress may not begin with investments, not stocks, not crypto, not side hustles promising wealth. Instead, it begins with something far less glamorous: creating distance from emergency. Because the moment someone gains even a small buffer, just enough to handle unexpected shocks, the entire equation begins to change. A broken tire becomes a repair instead of a loan. A bulk purchase replaces daily convenience store visits. Durability replaces disposability. And for the first time, life stops reacting to crises. It begins planning. But this realization brings one final question, one that quietly determines whether someone stays trapped in the cycle or begins walking out of it. If escaping the trap requires a small buffer of stability, why is that first $1,000 often the hardest money anyone will ever save? There is a moment in every financial struggle when something quietly changes. At first, the problem looks simple: not enough money. But after watching the pattern long enough, another truth begins to surface. The problem isn't only the price of things, it's the price of time. Consider 2 different lives unfolding on the same weekday evening. In one apartment, laundry is finished before dinner. A washer hums quietly in the background. 5 minutes of effort. Clothes go in, a button is pressed, life continues. Now imagine another version of that same evening. A bag of clothes carried down a crowded sidewalk. A bus ride across town. The laundromat smells faintly of detergent and hot metal. Coins drop into machines. Then comes the waiting. 40 minutes for the wash, another 40 for drying. Travel time both directions. 2 hours disappear into a task that took someone else 5 minutes. And suddenly, a strange calculation appears. The laundry itself costs $5, but the time lost? 2 hours that could have been used for rest, learning a new skill, taking an extra shift. Poverty quietly steals time, not just money. The same pattern repeats everywhere. Think about food. In wealthier neighborhoods, grocery stores stretch across entire blocks. Fresh vegetables, bulk pricing, affordable staples. But in many lower-income areas, those stores simply do not exist. Instead, there are convenience stores, bright lights, narrow aisles, prices slightly higher on every item. To reach the cheaper supermarket requires a bus ride, sometimes two. The cost isn't just the fare, it's the hour lost traveling. So people buy what is closest, and the poverty premium quietly grows again. The same dynamic appears with transportation. One person buys a reliable used car. Maintenance is predictable, repairs are rare. Another buys a cheaper vehicle because the budget demands it. But that car breaks down more often. Every breakdown steals something invisible. Work hours, opportunity, stability. Suddenly, the cheap option becomes the most expensive one imaginable. And somewhere along this path, another character emerges. The runner on the hamster wheel. Always moving, always working, yet strangely never getting ahead. Bills arrive faster than savings grow. Emergencies appear faster than plans can be made. From the outside, the situation often looks confusing. Observers might say, just save more, just budget better. But these comments miss the deeper equation entirely. Scarcity changes the way the brain works. Psychologists have found that when people face constant financial pressure, their mental bandwidth shrinks. Not intelligence, bandwidth. Imagine a computer running too many programs at once. The system slows. Decisions become rushed. Long-term strategy disappears. Only the most urgent task remains visible. Pay rent, buy food, fix today's problem. Tomorrow becomes blurry. This is why someone under financial stress might choose fast food instead of cooking, or accept a high-interest payday loan, or buy a lottery ticket that outsiders see as irrational. These decisions are not stupidity. They are the mind reacting to survival pressure. Scarcity creates tunnel vision, and tunnel vision keeps the hamster wheel spinning. Meanwhile, another character exists somewhere else in the same economy, the owner of stability. Their appliances rarely break. Their car starts every morning. Their savings absorb emergencies quietly, because stability protects something priceless, mental energy. Instead of worrying about broken shoes or overdue bills, that energy can be spent elsewhere, learning, investing, building, creating. And this is where the deeper realization finally lands. The difference between financial stability and financial stress isn't only about income, it's about buffer, a small distance between life and disaster. Without that buffer, every small problem multiplies. With it, problems shrink. But here comes the uncomfortable paradox. Everyone agrees a financial buffer is important, yet almost no one explains why the first small buffer changes everything. Why does a single $1,000 sometimes feel more powerful than the next 10,000? And what exactly happens the moment that buffer finally exists?
It might feel like you're choosing between overwhelming debt and real stability. But planning your financial future doesn't have to be stressful.
Life continues exactly as before. Paycheck arrives. Bills consume most of it. Something breaks.
Great. Now the coffee maker is
fills
broken.
the gap.
I need a new one
The
for
cycle
work, but that
repeats.
means more credit card debt.
Years
When does
pass
this cycle
like this.
end?
Movement without progress.
I thought I needed
But
a
the
fortune,
second future
but this
begins
small
with
buffer
something
finally brought me
surprisingly
peace of mind.
small. Not wealth,
It may seem small,
not success,
but realizing
just
this
a
modest
modest
buffer creates
financial
stability
wall
changes
between chaos
everything.
and survival.
It's already
A
covered
buffer,
thanks to my emergency
perhaps
savings.
$1,000
Wonderful.
sitting quietly
We'll have you back
in a
on the
bank
road
account.
in no time.
It doesn't look impressive.
Immediate
It won't
repair
impress
keeps small
friends.
problems
It
small.
won't buy luxury.
This principle applies
but
to
it
your
does
finances
something
just
far
as much
more
as it applies to your
powerful.
plumbing.
It
As you can
changes
see,
the
without
rules of the
immediate
game.
action, a small leak
tire
quickly
goes
becomes a
flat.
major issue.
Previously,
But with the
that
power of
meant
liquidity,
panic.
it's a simple
Credit
fix.
cards,
Reversing
borrowing,
the poverty
late
premium
fees.
starts here.
Now
When
it
you buy
simply
in bulk,
means a
the
repair,
savings add up
a
fast,
minor
putting more money
inconvenience.
back in your pocket.
A leaking pipe appears under the sink. Without savings, the leak waits. Water slowly damages the floor. A small problem grows into a renovation. But with a buffer, the repair happens immediately. Cheap problems stay cheap. This is the quiet power of liquidity. It stops small disasters from evolving into financial catastrophes. And suddenly, the boots theory, the one about expensive, cheap shoes, begins to reverse. Bulk groceries become possible. Reliable tools replace disposable ones. Preventative dental care replaces emergency surgery. The person who once had to choose the cheapest option now begins choosing the most durable option. Something else changes too.
Taking
The
control
brain
of your finances
relaxes.
starts with a solid
Not
plan.
completely,
Reviewing
but enough.
expenses and setting
That
clear
tunnel
goals helps
vision
ensure a
begins to
secure future.
widen. Decisions become calmer. Planning becomes possible. The hamster wheel slows, and a new identity slowly forms. Not rich, not yet, but no longer a prisoner of urgency.
How to
A
make
new
this work for
character
me?
appears. The builder. Someone who stops reacting to financial chaos and
As we
begins
examine how money
quietly
flows, we see it
redesigning the
moves through the
system of their
system,
life.
connecting different
The
parts of the
shift
economy,
may seem
symbolized
small
by
at
these gears
first,
and arrows.
buying a reliable appliance instead of a disposable one, fixing problems early instead of waiting for disaster,
With a
paying
solid
off
strategy,
high-interest
managing your
debt
expenses and
before
boosting your
investing.
savings becomes simple.
Each decision
It's all
might
about
appear
setting clear
boring,
financial goals.
unimpressive, but mathematically, these choices produce extraordinary returns. Paying off credit card debt at 20% interest is effectively a guaranteed 20% investment. Few investments in the world offer that certainty. Yet the
Long-term
most
thinking means
powerful
choosing
part of this
quality that
transformation
lasts,
isn't the
saving
money
money in the
saved,
long run.
it's the control regained. Because the moment someone understands the poverty premium, something inside them changes. The late fees, the convenience charges, the interest traps, they are no longer invisible. They become enemies. And every dollar saved becomes a small act of rebellion against the system that
Your
profits from
savings start
financial
compounding
instability.
early, and over time,
Gradually,
that growth
the
accelerates
equation begins
significantly,
to tilt
leading
in
to
the other
amazing
direction.
returns.
Durability replaces fragility. Planning replaces panic. Freedom replaces urgency. But even here, a deeper realization still waits ahead. Because once someone escapes the poverty premium,
The future
another
is bright.
question
With the
quietly
right plan,
appears.
achieving
If the
financial
system
independence
punishes
is
people
closer
for
than you
being
think.
broke, what happens when someone finally learns how to make the system work in their favor instead? There comes a quiet moment in every financial journey when something subtle shifts. Nothing dramatic happens. No lottery win, no sudden promotion, no overnight transformation. Just a different way of seeing the world. The same grocery store, the same bills, the same paycheck. Yet the invisible math behind everyday life finally becomes clear. Because once someone understands the poverty premium, the game is no longer mysterious. It becomes a system, and systems can be redesigned. The realization often begins with a simple observation. Most financial advice talks about getting rich, stocks, crypto, real estate, side hustles promising escape velocity. But for someone climbing out of scarcity, wealth does not begin with multiplying money. It begins with stopping the leaks. Somewhere inside every struggling financial life, there are what could be called vampire costs. Expenses that quietly drain money every month. High-interest credit cards, late payment penalties, overdraft fees, disposable products that must be replaced again and again. These costs behave like tiny financial predators. Individually, they seem harmless. Together, they quietly consume thousands of dollars over time. The person trapped in urgency rarely sees them clearly, but the moment awareness appears, something powerful becomes possible. Life can be audited. Not judged, not shamed, simply examined. Where is money leaking simply because stability does not yet exist? Where is the system charging extra for scarcity? A small list begins to form. The expensive car loan, the bank account fees, the appliances constantly breaking, the purchases made in tiny quantities at inflated prices. Each leak represents an opportunity, not for wealth yet, but for freedom. Because plugging just one of these leaks can change the entire financial ecosystem of a life. Fix the unreliable car that keeps consuming repair costs. Pay off the high-interest debt draining every paycheck. Buy the durable tool instead of the disposable one. Each step feels small, but something profound happens when enough of them accumulate. The poverty premium begins to disappear, and as it disappears, something remarkable emerges: momentum. Money that once vanished into emergencies begins to stay. Savings begin to grow. Options begin to appear. And slowly the old characters fade away. The prisoner of urgency, the runner on the hamster wheel, the borrower of tomorrow. In their place stands someone new, the owner of stability. Not rich, not yet, but standing on solid ground. From this point forward, the rules of the game change again, because the climb from $0 to $10,000 is often the hardest financial journey anyone will ever face. Every dollar requires discipline, patience, resistance to 1,000 temptations. But once that threshold is crossed, something curious happens. Money begins to behave differently. Instead of reacting to emergencies, it begins to work quietly in the background. Interest compounds, opportunities appear, risk decreases, and the wind that once pushed against progress slowly begins to push in the other direction. But perhaps the most important transformation has nothing to do with numbers. It is psychological. The realization that financial struggle was never purely a personal failure. It was a system of penalties, a system designed to charge extra for instability. And understanding that truth removes a heavy weight many people carry silently for years, the weight of blame. Because once the math is understood, the mission becomes clear. Not to chase wealth blindly, but to dismantle the penalties one by one, to replace fragility with durability, urgency with stability, short-term survival with long-term design. In the end, escaping the trap rarely looks glamorous. There are no fireworks, no dramatic final scene, just a person walking through life with dry feet, wearing boots that finally last, and realizing that the most powerful financial decision was never about becoming rich overnight. It was simply about refusing to keep paying the hidden price of being broke.